So today is lesson 11. We spent a little bit of time today just talking about freelancing, creating contracts, making sure we get paid from clients. Today is all about file uploads. We need to look at file uploads because this is the last requirement for assignment 2 part 2 that we haven't yet covered. It's due in a couple weeks, so we've got to be able to know how do we upload files in our PHP application. So we'll do a quick walkthrough of what that looks like, and then we're going to do a simple practice upload and save page, and then we want to integrate it in with our shopping list. So we could actually attach a picture of a food item in our grocery list and have that item display. So that's where we're going and what we want to do today. So I'll give you a quick overview. You can find this slide deck in the lesson 11 folder on D2L. It's only a few slides. I'll give you kind of a overview of how this will look. So a lot of web applications include this functionality that for whatever reason, we need our end users to supply files to us. Lots of different, even though, you know, the reasons why or the types of files we might ask for, they vary a lot from site to site. The overall process, it's the same every time. So once we know how to do it for one kind of file, we can just reuse that same process. So use the chat. Tell me an example of a website that allows you to upload files, and what kind of file does it allow you to upload? Okay, so yep, D2L and Dropbox, Google Drive. Yeah, any social media. You know, I mean, Instagram doesn't exist if there's no file uploads, right? The entire content of the site comes from people uploading, as Adam mentioned, pictures. Think of any other sites? Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. Any file converters. So I want to be able to upload a PNG and have it saved to a JPEG, for example. Yep. All good examples. Any other examples you can think of? Websites you've used where you can upload files? Yeah, Shazil. So that would be another good example of a converter, doc to PDF. Yeah, YouTube, right? After every class, that's right, Megan. Once WebEx finishes my recordings, when I remember, which is most of the time, I go to GitHub. Sorry, I'm reading Chris's comment. I go to YouTube Studio and I click on Create, and it allows me to upload my MP4 screen recordings. Yep, we can upload to GitHub. Right. Look, I've never used one of those, but we can do a reverse image search where we can upload an image and it'll show us similar images. So we see it used all the time, right? We have some kind of upload either with a drag and drop or the ability to just open a file dialog where we can then pick a file that exists on our own device, whether it's a computer, mobile device, whatever type of device it is. And then it's going to take a copy of that file from our client device and save it to the web server. Right, so here were some of the examples, and you guys really mentioned almost all of these, right? Even webmail. So using Outlook in your browser, using Gmail, when you add an attachment to an email, we're uploading a file to a web page. Uploading spreadsheets is also really common in business. So businesses they keep a lot of data in Excel files where they want to move it from one database, they export it to Excel, and then they need to upload it into a web portal. Yeah, Megan, it's true. They have massive storage accounts for these things, right? So for example, a common use of this, so I had a customer, an e-commerce site, and every day they would ship out, you know, hundreds or even at Christmas, thousands of products a day. And they would have all of the shipping numbers in an Excel file, like a CSV. So they needed me to build in the ability for them to browse and upload a CSV file where they would attach a tracking number from the shipper along with each order number. So I had to upload that file and then in a loop, read and save. I'd have to attach each tracking number to each order. So when a customer logged in and looked at their order status, they'd then be able to see their tracking number, which they could click on. So they didn't, my customer said, I don't want to pay someone to enter all these tracking numbers into the website one at a time. We already have it in a spreadsheet. You build the file upload so that we can just upload it. So these are really common uses of file upload. So it's important that we know how to do it. So how does this work? Whenever a file upload is considered an input, so we always need a form tag, just like the forms that by now everyone's comfortable with working with, right? We've used text boxes, we've used text areas, we've used drop-down lists, and then we have a submit button. So we'll use a new type of input called a file input. Any form that's going to allow us to upload is going to have one of these. And our form also needs this special attribute. So far with forms, we've only worked with two attributes. We've worked with the method, get or post, and we've worked with the action. So the page that processes that post or that get. And we need this attribute, this encoding type, because here's the way the file actually gets transferred. So let's say I've got a file on my laptop and I want to upload it to the web server. Bless you. I think somebody's got their mic on. If that's you, maybe I could ask you just to mute it so we're not getting background noise. Thank you. So here's how it works. When we add this encoding type to our form and our user browses to a file, what happens is the file is actually converted to binary. So I've got a file in my computer called, assignment1.zip. When I upload that to D2L, in our form, it converts that file to binary. So the binary gets transferred from our computer up to the web server, and then it gets recreated back as a zip file on the web server. But without this encoding type attribute, that binary conversion never happens, and the file will just be ignored. It won't generate an error, but it's like no file was ever uploaded. And the way this works with PHP, when we're uploading a file, it automatically saves the file into a unique spot in the server cache. Now, it doesn't stay there. It goes to the server cache so that we can check the file. We can check things like the file type, the file size, the name, and we can access this temporary upload location with the TMP_name property. So it kind of goes into like a holding area at first, but it won't stay there. So before we move it to the folder we want it to go in, we're going to check that it's the right file type. We're going to check that maybe the size is right. We may have a minimum and a maximum file size. And we might also want to generate a unique name. How come? Many sites, when you upload files, they rename them. Why would they rename files that users upload? I mean, D2L doesn't do it, but something like Facebook or Instagram is going to rename the pictures you upload. That's right, Megan. Basically, just to prevent duplicates, right? Could you imagine how that would work on a site like a social media site if there was no unique naming convention? So any file you uploaded, it would just overwrite anybody's file with the same name. So obviously, we want to prevent this. So we'll look at a couple of potential algorithms for making sure, yeah, Ivan, that's true. Some output for files will pre-build the file names. So that's kind of what we'll do. So what we can do, one way of doing this is by using the session ID, because that's generated on the server, and every session ID is going to be unique. So even if two users upload the same file with the same name at the same time, each one of them is going to have a unique session ID. So if we include that session ID as part of the final file name, that'll guarantee that they're unique. And then lastly, we're going to use this method. One of the rare PHP methods that actually has a name that makes sense. The method's called move uploaded file, and it does exactly what it sounds like. So that will copy the file or move or transfer it out of the temporary directory into whatever folder we ultimately want that file to reside in, whether it's an IMG folder or an uploads folder, whatever it should be. The one other thing we'll need to keep in mind is permissions. By default on most web servers, and AWS is no different, the permissions we need to write files to the server programmatically is disabled. So an anonymous user won't have access to write new files. So we're going to have to go into our file permissions using FileZilla and manually enable the ability for an anonymous user to upload a file. So we'll need to do that as well. So it's probably going to work locally, but if we try the same thing on AWS without enabling this permission, our files just get ignored. We won't get an error, but they're not going to get created. So that's our process. So we're going to do a really simple example first, and then we'll do a more integrated example. Once we understand how it works and we have it functioning, we'll then integrate it into our grocery list separately. Okay, so that's the plan. That's where we're going. I may refer back to some of the elements in this slide deck as we go. And again, you can find these slides for reference right here on D2L, file upload slides. So to get going, make sure you connect to the VPN. Make sure you start up your local XAMPP server and fire up PHP Storm or Visual Studio Code, whatever your editor of choice is. And let's get LAMP Food back up and running. Okay, so we should be able to fire it up in our browser. So here's our grocery list. Shows me I'm logged in. Doesn't really matter if I'm logged in or not right now. So we'll just build like a test upload page first, and then we're going to integrate it into our item details page. So when we're adding or editing an item, we have the ability to attach a picture. Right? This would be useful for me because sometimes one of my kids says, oh, I don't just want, I've got a little pen and paper grocery list in the kitchen. They write something on it, but sometimes they're picky and they say, no, I don't want these kind of bagels. I want these. So I'd say, great, take a picture and upload it in the list. And then I know exactly what to get you so that you don't complain to me. So I'm going to put our test files in here. I have this old files directory. So our kind of just sample upload pages, they're not really part of the end product. So I'm going to expand my old files, and I'm going to make a new PHP file here. And I will call this upload test. I'll just leave my page title again. We're really just interested in the file upload piece for now. So put on a form. We'll add our usual actions of method. Sorry, our usual attributes, method and action. So this form will post to a page I'll call process upload test. I'm not going to worry about Bootstrap or anything else on this page. just a field set. So I'll put on a label, and then I'm going to put on an input. Name will be my file. And here's where we're going to add the attribute, type equals file. So it's not a regular input. So far, the only thing that's new that we've never seen before is this type equals file. I also now need to add my third attribute to my form. We've got method and action as usual, but this is where we need the encoding type. I'll show you what happens after when we take the encoding type out. And our encoding type, and this is why I like PHP Storm, it gives us, got this nice code hints. It's multi-part form data. So this attribute is required to convert our file upload to binary. And then down here, we'll just add a button. That just says upload now. So here's our form. I can put it up on Pastebin, but it's pretty simple. So it's a standard HTML form with two new parts, the encoding type attribute and the type equals file attribute. So any form where we're going to allow users to upload, it's got to have the encoding type, and we must have at least one input with type equals file. So if you need the form, here it is. So this is in my old files. So this is what it looks like. Our input says, I get a browse button and it says no file selected. And when I click it, it gives me a file dialog box. Ivan, we don't need the header for this. You can put it on if you want. But again, this file is really just for testing purposes. It's not really integrated into the rest of our LAMP food project. If you want the header, by all means. Now notice also, it renders slightly differently in different browsers. So in Chrome, it says no file chosen. In Firefox, the implementation says no file selected. I mean, these are pretty trivial differences, really. And in Edge also says no file chosen. So HTML is largely dumb, right? It's generally presentation only. The file input is one of the few actual functional pieces of elements in HTML. It actually does something. Right? When you click it, we get this file dialog, and we can browse to any file on our machine. So our form's fairly simple, and it's actually done. Anybody have any questions about our form? Sure, Chris, go ahead. That would be PHP. So that's part of what we're going to look at. Oh, sorry, you're talking about when you're browsing, not when the file is uploaded. That's a good question. That would that would actually be HTML. I think there may be a way to limit. I haven't tried doing that in so long. That's a really good point. Can we do input file limit extension? There may be an attribute right in here. Yes. So it's in the accept. Sorry. It's here. We can accept extensions. So let's actually try this. I'll put it in the chat. Haven't tried this before. That's a good suggestion. So let's add that in. We're going to accept images and documents only. I'm going to try it again. So I'll refresh. So I will pick a JPEG. And I get a 404. That's okay. That's good. But what if I pick a PDF or an XLS file, or anything else? Do I have a PDF? I think I'd have PDFs somewhere. These are all Word documents. Right, so yes, it has the supported types here now. So it actually won't, thank you. Thanks, Megan. So it won't show files other than those types. So it doesn't prevent it, it just filters them. But if the user picks all types, then they are going to get it. So you can't actually prevent them, you can only filter, but the user can override that. It's a good question. Okay, so now we can generate this page. So you can create it manually, or if you're using PHP Storm, if you just mouse over your process upload test file, it should be yellow because that file doesn't exist. So I'm just going to put my mouse over, I get this little pop-up window, and it gives me the option to create the file called process upload test. So I'm going to click on this because it's going to build the file for me. So we want to inspect and output some of the details about the file that got uploaded. So in here, let's put on a set of PHP tags. So I'll create a variable called name. So which PHP array do you think we're going to use to access the file upload? Right, we've got 8 of them here. We've worked with session, we've worked with post and get. Yes, Chris, it could be. We want the files collection. So now in here, we're going to specify my file because that's the name of this input. We might have multiple file inputs, so we need to refer to them by name. And this is a multi-dimensional array, potentially, we want the name. And let's just print it out. So let's try this now. We want to upload the file, and this should print out the name, the original file name. So these go in PHP tags. We'll start with the file name, and then we'll inspect some of the other attributes. So I'll browse to something. Got a PNG. So it shows me the original file name. If I go and browse to something else, like a Word document, and it shows me the name of the file here as well. I have no idea why I can hear somebody because everyone shows that they're on mute. But I can hear somebody. Now I want to show you the importance of the encoding type attribute. I'm going to take it out on my form. You don't have to take it out on yours. But if I remove that for a minute, back, I'll browse. When I upload my file now the file called my file, it's undefined, right? Because there was no file uploaded. So without that encoding type, the file upload gets ignored. So this attribute has to be included in any HTML form tag where users can upload. So let's inspect a few of the other properties here. We've got a name. Let's get the file size. And let's print that out as well. So we're displaying the file name, we're displaying the size of the file as well. Because we may place limits around this, because storage is expensive. So this is interesting. I uploaded a Word document. What do you notice about the file size? I can go back and try another file as well. I'll go back to pictures and so it shows 144,736. So here's the file I just uploaded. Jacob, that's more than a wild guess. That's a very accurate guess. So even though we tend to think of file size, we tend to think about in kilobytes, megabytes, even gigabytes. When we do file uploads in PHP and we evaluate the size, it's going to be in bytes. So if your limit is 500 kilobytes, you'd need to set your limit, right? And remember, so size is in bytes. How many bytes in a kilobyte? Thank you, Megan. Good guess, Chris. So you'd actually have to if you want to set size limits in kilobytes, you'd have to multiply by 1024 in order to set size limits. Let's check two more attributes. We'll take a break. Let's do the type. And let's print it out. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing we did with name and size. We're just going to inspect the file type and print that out as well. If I refresh, I can just say resend the form action. So I don't have to browse and upload again. And it tells me it's an image/PNG. Let's try a few other file types. What if I take a JPEG? Comes out as image/JPEG. What about a Word document? Gives me this. Application, VND, Open Excel format, Office document, word processing. So if you want to validate the format, make sure you're getting a Word document, this is the type you need. Now there's a gotcha here with this that we're going to have to address. Let's say I do this, okay? Let's say I have a new text document. Let's say I do this. I could, so I make a file and it's like this. I could be a virus.exe. So this is the file I've created. But I actually do this and say, oh, I'm going to change the name so it looks like an image. This is not actually a JPEG, but based on the extension, my computer thinks it's a JPEG. I'm going to browse to it and try to upload it. And if I'm checking the file type, it says this is a JPEG. So what this is telling me is type only checks the extension and not the actual file type. So we're going to need a solution for this. Because just checking the type doesn't really help us. That only tells us the extension. It doesn't really tell us what kind of file we're dealing with. So we're going to need to do a little bit more in terms of making sure that users give us a file type that we want to accept. So instead of using this, let me put this up here. Let's comment this out. So we're going to use this instead. Type equals, and I'm going to use another way to check the type. We've got this method called Mime content type. And we can pass in here, it wants a path to the file. So sorry, we need one other property first. We need to know where the file is because it gets uploaded into cache. So we need the path to the temporary file. So we'll finish that line in a minute. First, we'll do this. We'll create a variable called TMP name. And we're going to check the TMP name attribute and output it. Now we can use this variable to check the actual content of the file, irrespective of the extension. I'll upload all this to GitHub in a minute. We're almost due for a break. So this should tell us the actual file type, content type, not just what the extension is. There's the full file. So I'm going to try this out again. So first I'll go and pick an actual PNG file. And it says, gives me the file name, gives me the size in bytes. It shows me where it is. So notice it's in my XAMPP directory in a TMP folder. And it gets a temporary name that's unique. And it tells me this is an image/PNG. Cool. Now what's going to happen if I try and upload the file that I sort of spoofed the file type? This one. Right? So now when I use Mime content type, it knows this is an empty file. It knows this is not a JPG. It's not a JPEG. So we need to use Mime content type and not just the type attribute. And this TMP name, it's going to be unique every time. If I upload the same file twice in a row, it's going to go, each one is going to go into a different spot in the cache. If I just refresh and resubmit, this value is going to change. So I'll re-upload the same file, and it gives me a different TMP name. So that's pointing to a spot in cache, and they get deleted out of here maybe every 20, 30 minutes. I'm not sure how long. So we now have what we need to be able to validate that we're happy with the file, that it meets our size requirements, and it meets our content type requirements before we might give it a unique name and save. Now it's 3 o'clock. I do want to add that into here, but I'm going to push up to GitHub. We'll take a 10-minute break here. We'll do that unique naming piece and actually save the file, move it out of cache after we take a break. All right. So I'm going to push what we've done up to Git, and we'll take a pause here.